Hi, welcome to the Supply Chain Management with GDP podcast, where we discuss industry best practices, current affairs, effective leadership, and the latest innovations in the world of supply chain. Aimed at explaining the concepts of supply chain in the leanest way possible, comes one of the most efficient and quickest shows where you will listen to interviews with various subject matter experts in the supply chain domain. So let's just get right into it. Hi, everyone. Welcome to another episode from Supply Chain with GDP. Today, we have a very special guest who's working at Waters Corp. Her name is Lingjie. Thank you, Lingjie, for being part of this podcast and sharing your insights, thoughts, and how the supply chain world works. So I'll just let you introduce yourself.
Thank you, Gagan. I worked as a global supply chain data scientist at Waters. So Waters serves a life science market where the market comprising drug discovery, drug development. So our product also support the COVID-19 research recently. Before I joined Waters, I have been with Dow EMC for 1 year and 10 months, where Gagan is also working there as well. So
Yes.
that's how we met. At Dow, I work as a supply chain program data advisor. Prior to that, I also working in a transportation consulting company called Trans Solution for around 2 years. My working experience emphasized in supply chain and the data analytics. So my academic background is engineering oriented. So my bachelor is in automation. It's a concentration under electronic engineering. And after that, I get my master from Northeastern University, major in industrial engineering.
Yep. I think we have a lot of common points over there in terms of me also being from electrical electronics. So why did you choose to work at Waters Corp?
I personally like the life science industry, how the product is and how the market works. But personally, I think the main reason it's the company, it really fits where I am at my career path this time. So I have been working for 4 years after my graduation, but for the previous times, I more define myself is in a learning or growing phase. So either in the technical side or professional role growing side. Learning is still my top goal, but at the same time, I feel like I have something to offer. So I want to try my idea and try to serve the problem using some of my solution. So I think Waters really provides the balance for me.
Oh, that makes perfect sense. So let's move on more into more specific thing on what do you do day over day or as holistically as a senior data scientist for global supply chain?
For the work specifically, we do automation to optimize the data collection and the reporting process. The second one is the data environment building. So when we think about the supply chain, they have a very large amount of data. They might be very scattered. So a key work is going to how to make a data environment or centralize, I would describe as centralize the data system to give us a visibility to see how our supply chain is performing. So the third part is to optimize the system. So with the data environment, with the reporting to show the matrix and the measures, we want to use those performance indicator to create a statistical model to drive some optimal solution. So including some example like a statistical safety stock, statistical inventory model, how to define the inventory level, and how to predict for the shortage.
Got it. Sounds super exciting and a lot of technical stuff, which very honestly went a little bit over my head, but then I understand majority of it. So a lot of young data professionals trying to make a career maybe in supply chain data analytics focus a lot more on Python, on trying to understand R, like specializing in being a Tableau developer, Power BI,
Yeah.
and there's so many other tools out there. But how important is Excel in the supply chain world?
Very good question. When I in school, I spent a lot of time in SQL and developing language like Python, R, but actually Excel, it has a very, very important role in supply chain world. That's where you really can't say no to it. So that's something I learned a lot and built my strengths in Excel in my first role, and that from now I'm still very grateful I had that experience. The reason why Excel is so important in supply chain world is the main supply chain tool like SAP and other tool, they are very, very dependent on Excel. So SAP export in Excel or only in Excel file or CSV file. Or if you want to pull some data from large data warehouse, the plugin option is also linked to Excel. So Excel not only it as a data file, it also you can think of like a front end or export file dependent with a lot of key supply chain software. So when you say Excel, you can think of, okay, type in information, store information, it's Excel skill, but Excel do have more advanced skill like their formula, very good formula. They have analytics side, like name is Excel solver, and Excel even have machine learning called XM minor something. Maybe the name is not accurate in my mind anymore, but never think Excel it's like a tool. It will be replaced soon. I don't foresee that happen. So when I say advanced Excel skills, so shortcut, a lot of shortcut, we need to be familiar with formula, VLOOKUP, pivot table, and index match. Those things I never had a chance to learn when I'm in school, but in work, I feel like those formula can make really big difference, and it's like a default skill you have to have. So the third part, it's macro. So if you are getting more advanced into it, spend some time with macro VBA, so it can really automate a lot of tedious work, and can even think about the job. It can build a lot of value for a team. A lot of people still doing repetitive work. If you have the VBA skills, it makes the difference.
I can totally relate to this because someone who works as a supply chain manager, it's so much more easier to deal with Excel than to deal with some tools. So I would rather feed my data into an Excel and have the analytics team work off through an Excel. So whatever you said, like totally makes sense from looking at a business perspective. But then, yeah, I think we're coming close to the end of the podcast. So let me just ask you one last final question. What is the best advice you have for young professionals who are trying to make a career in data science or in supply chain or both together?
Firstly, if you have chance to learn about the supply chain, if you have like the chance to have some co-op, especially in Northeastern, I would say spend some time to gain your supply chain knowledge. So the second side is create your network. There are a bunch of good events out there. So do search on LinkedIn and join those events. And those experienced professionals, they are very, very nice and open to share with young graduates.
That's awesome. I think that is some advice that a lot of young professionals will value. And I think that brings a wrap to the session. Thank you so much, Lingjie, for taking time out and speaking your heart out and giving your experiences. I believe the listeners will take a lot out of this and try to make a better step towards supply chain data analytics.
Yeah, thank you, Gargan. Thank you for inviting me for this awesome podcast. And I appreciate what you do, not only to have me here, but also what do you want to do to create influence of the supply chain and have a platform for the young professional to build the career and the experienced professional to share their experience. That's a very, very healthy environment you're building, and I believe it will make big impact.
Thank you. And thank you so much to all the listeners for tuning in for one more episode on supply chain management with GDP. I hope you all have a good day and good night, and I'll see you next week again. Thank you. Hi, welcome to the Supply Chain Management with GDP podcast, where we discuss industry best practices, current affairs, effective leadership, and the latest innovations in the world of supply chain. Aimed at explaining the concepts of supply chain in the leanest